let me give you a couple of philosophies to consider. Here's the first one. It's called the philosophy of the poor. Poor people usually spend their money and invest what's left.
I only own 100 of the S&P 500 because I care about the quality of the balance sheet above all.
And the secret to being rich is not a college education, but can you control cash flow?
By far the best investment you can make is in yourself. I mean, for example, communication skills.
I would prefer in a portfolio to have exposure to at least 5 sectors, you know, and at least 20 stocks.
If you are stranded on a tropical island and you have $1 trillion, it's useless.
What are, say, 3 pieces of advice you would give to people who are looking to succeed in business?
Well, by far the best investment you can make is in yourself. I mean, for example, communication skills. I tell the students that come that they're going to graduate schools and business, and they're learning all these complicated formulas and all that. If they just learn to communicate better, and both in writing and in person, they increase their value at least 50%. And, I mean, if you can't communicate, somebody says, you know, it's like winking at a girl in the dark. Nothing happens, you know, basically. And you have to be able to get forth your ideas, and that's relatively easy. I did it myself with the Dale Carnegie course. Some people wish I'd taken a shorter course now in terms of my talking later on, but it's just hugely important. And if you invest in yourself, nobody can take it away from you. I mean, the second thing, which I'll get a certain criticism for not living it, but I do tell those students, you know, that if I gave you a car and it'd be the only car you get in the rest of your life, you take care of it like you can't believe. Any scratch, you'd fix that moment. You'd read the owner's manual. You keep a garage and do all these things, and you get exactly one mind and one body in this world. And you can't start taking care of it when you're 50. By that time, you'll have rusted out if you haven't done anything. So you should really make sure that you just remember that you just got one mind and body to get through life with and to do the most with it. Well, I've said many times that if you get to be 65 or 70 and later, and the people that you want to have love you actually do love you, you're a success. I've never seen anybody that reaches that age. I mean, I'm not talking about somebody that's in extreme poverty or pain or something, but I've never seen anybody that, if they have a lot of people that love them, that is other than happy. And I've seen some very, very wealthy people that they give testimonial dinners to and name schools after and everything. And nobody loves them, you know. Their own kids would say, he's in the attic, you know. They never came.
Applying the physics tools of thinking about things in the limit is helpful. If you are stranded on a tropical island and you have $1 trillion, it's useless because there's no resource allocation. Money is a database for resource allocation, but there's no resources to allocate except yourself. If you're stranded on a desert island with no food, all the Bitcoin in the world will not stop you from starving. So, like, just think of money as a database for resource allocation across time and space. And in what form should that database or data system, what would be most effective?
So these are the 4 words: income, expense, asset, liability, and the last 2 words are the words cash flow. And that's why the game is called cash flow. And the secret to being rich is not a college education, but can you control cash flow? And this is what cash flowing looks like. So this here, you need this, income, expense, asset, liability. Again, this is, you get a job. And this was my poor dad: go to school, get a job, get your PhD. And so this here is cash flow. So the income comes in and it goes out this way. First line of expense is tax. So this is a poor person's cash flow pattern. It's not how much money you make. Most people, you know, I don't care if you have a PhD or no school at all, but they can't control the cash flowing out through their expenses. And so that's why people like Susie Orman say, cut up your credit cards, live below your means, because you're a spendaholic. So that's a poor person.
Well, not every stock. I mean, obviously large cap, I only own 100 of the S&P 500 because I care about the quality of the balance sheet above all. The ability for the business model to be sustained. I want to participate in the cash flow profits in the form of distributions. You know, you can find companies paying 1.5 to 2% of their profits in the form of dividends and have potential growth of their value. And so I do that. But they're generally very liquid. But when you get into the micro stocks or you take very speculative positions on in things like junior pharma, you have to understand that there's volatility there and you need to mitigate that risk. And so this comes from experience. I've always said I'm a big fan of Robinhood because even though it's got a lot of criticism, it helps 22 million people learn about stocks. You can't even short a stock on Robinhood. People don't know that. So I think Vlad, the CEO there, who I had a chance to meet recently, expressed to me his heartfelt concern that people didn't blow themselves up on his platform, and they've done a lot of work to try and help people protect themselves from themselves. And so I'm a big believer in learning the ways of the stock market in that way. Even if it's only $200 you're playing with, you can buy fractional shares and start to understand portfolio management.
This is a middle class person's cash flow pattern. And this is where the house comes in. First thing, you know, most kids do when they get pay raise or that, they buy themselves a bigger house. Oh, my house is an asset. Now, who tells you that? Your real estate agent, of course.
Yeah.
Right? Because they want to give you this false sense of security while you're getting screwed.
Exactly.
You know, but when you look at what happens with a house, a personal residence, something I live in, the money comes in and goes out. And this is middle class, but it also goes out through a mortgage payments. Oh, but I don't have a mortgage. You still have taxes. You still, you know, Hawaii just raised the property taxes on me, which is probably what I'm going to sell. I'm going to get out of Hawaii. But you have taxes and you have upkeep. So that's why your house is not an asset, is because it's taking money from your pocket. So very simply said, assets put money in my pocket, liabilities take money from my pocket. And then this here is, so I'm not saying don't buy a house, but here is a house that I've got. And I started when I was 25, bought my first house, and it was an apartment, it was an investment property. I didn't live in it, I rented it out, and it put money in my pocket. So very simple, the definition of asset and liability is not the house or this, it's cash flow. Where is the cash flowing? So as a young person, and to all millennials or if you're old, financial intelligence is the ability to control cash flow. And that's what they don't teach you at school. They tell you to go to school, get a job. First thing is tax. You know, you'll pay, most of your money will go out through taxes in your lifetime. And then they tell you to buy a house and a car. A car is an asset. No, a car is a liability. You got insurance, gas, upkeep, and all this. Now, if you buy a taxi car, it could be an asset.
The right philosophy. Now, let me give you a couple of philosophies to consider. Here's the first one. It's called the philosophy of the poor. And here it is. Poor people usually spend their money and invest what's left. Now, here's the philosophy of the rich. Rich people invest their money and spend what's left. And here's the startling answer. It really doesn't matter what the amount is. What's most important is not the amount. What's really important is the philosophy. So I would ask you to adopt this philosophy of spending after you have invested. Invest first, then spend. And I've got a little formula that I'm going to share with you. Now, what should a child do with $1? Well, in my opinion, it makes all the difference in the world. A person's economic future starts with a child with $1. Somebody says, oh, no, you're only young once. Let him spend it all. Well, when would you hope that would stop? Somebody says, well, wait till he's 50 and broke like me, and, and then he'll learn. Well, no, we don't want to wait that long. If I would have known earlier than age 25, I would have changed. In high school, if they would have had classes called Wealth 1, Wealth 2, I'd have taken both classes. I would not have waited until age 25. So the earlier the better. So what should a child do with $1? Here's the simple premise to begin with. Don't spend it all. And if a child wants to spend the whole $1, you got to say, hey, don't spend it all. You know, don't spend it all. They'll say, why not? It's my $1. I earned it. You say, I know you earned it, but don't spend it all. They'll still say, why not? Say, let me show you why not. So you put them in your car, take them to the other side of town, and show them where people live that spend the whole $1. You just drive them around. Kids learn best by visual. Just drive around and say, would you like to live here? Kid says, no. Would you like to live like these people live? Kid says, no, no. Then you can't spend the whole $1. Now let me give you my best view of what to do with $1. Here's my first bit of advice. Never spend more than 70 cents. Never spend more than 70 cents. Now you got to pick some number, and the number you pick is going to be determined by your philosophy. Now, kids say to me, well, okay, what do I do with the other 30 cents? And here's what I teach them. 10 cents for charity. Charity or church, or helping people that can't help themselves. 10 cents to support worthy projects. Projects that you feel good about. 10 cents out of every $1. It's called being generous with part of what you've taken out of society. Now, in my opinion, nothing teaches us character better than generosity. No class, no teacher, no book teaches character better than generosity. And the best time to start is when the amounts are small, because when the amounts get larger, sometimes it's a little more difficult. You know, giving 100,000 out of $1 million, someone says, oh, if I had $1 million, I'd give 100,000. I'm not sure. That's a lot of money. So the time to start is when the amounts are small. 10 cents out of the $1.
I mean, you know, I would prefer in a portfolio to have exposure to at least 5 sectors, you know, and at least 20 stocks. I mean, to me, I own way more than that. But, you know, I've got, the only sectors I don't have exposure to right now are duration risks like REITs, energy stocks I don't have any exposure to right now. I do have exposure to banks, but, you know, just JP Morgan. I have some exposure to financial services. I'm looking for companies that are really in the sweet spot for America 2.0, the consumer stocks, the technology stocks, the healthcare stocks. And so my weighting is a little bit, you know, full weightings into those 3 sectors. And so then 40% of the sectoral weighting to others. But I also have geographic exposure. I'm up to 20% in Europe now, which is a first for me because the values are so interesting there. And frankly, there's 50 stocks in Europe like Roche and Nestle that are really, if you think about them, domestic stocks that just happen to be headquartered in another place. I mean, so much American tobacco is sold in the U.S. So I try and find those companies that are representative of sectors I already own here, and I'm just getting them at a PE discount in Europe. And I don't mind having some currency. I buy them in the native currency, so I've got some exposure to Swiss franc, to euro, to British pound. There's nothing wrong with that. If you're going to take exposure to Bitcoin, you might as well own some other currencies too.
Next 10 cents, I call active capital. Active capital means do something to make a profit. Set aside a portion of your income. Wages are okay, but I'm telling you, wages will make you a living. Profits will make you a fortune. So set aside part of your income as capital, called active capital. Any kind of project you can possibly think of, you can possibly come up with. In California, kids do pay taxes. When a child walks into 7-Eleven, buys something that costs $1, the proprietor says, give me 7 more pennies. And the child says, hey, what's these 7 pennies for? And the proprietor says, that's the taxes. Kid says, well, hey, I'm only 8 years old. Proprietor says, congratulations, you're my youngest taxpayer. Give me the money. 10 cents out of your living, out of the money you earn, set aside for capital. Capital to try your best to show a profit. Then you must jot this down if you're taking notes. Profits are better than wages. 1, you can't usually start wages until you're about 16, 15, 16, but you can make a profit long before you're eligible to start earning wages. And then there's no limit to profits, and they can double and triple and quadruple. You know, there's no limit. It's incredible how fast profits can grow. Now, the third 10 cents is vitally important. I call it passive capital. Capital you let somebody else use. A financial institution, stocks and bonds, mutual funds, whatever. Let someone else use it. You furnish the money. They use it to make a profit, but they pay you for the use of it, called interest. And here's one of the things that'll make you financially independent fairly quickly, and that's called compound interest. And this is how you get it. Letting someone else use a portion of your money, your substance. They show the profit, they pay you interest. And this passive capital, I'm telling you, over a sustained period of time, if you'll develop this little 10, 10, 10, and 70, especially starting at age 15, I'm telling you, by the time you're 35, you will be financially independent. You'll have the ability to live from the income of your own resources.